I'm Jeffrey Villarduen in Rise of Three Kingdoms, a mod for Medieval 2 Total War Kingdoms. Rise of Three Kingdoms came out about 4 years ago in a playable version, and it was subsequently released as a full game around 2014 or 15, thereabouts. It's a mod, as I said, for Medieval 2 Total War. You may have heard that Creative Assembly announced a couple of months ago that they will be releasing a full game in the Total War series on the Rise of Three Kingdoms. So we don't have yet any insight about how that game is going to look like, but I will cover a little bit this mod because I expect there'll be some basic similarities about the historical background and so on. There is one thing that I'm a little bit worried about. There's a publicity issue for Creative Assembly, and I expect they're aware of this. But just in case, I hope they're aware that they don't have Google or YouTube in China. It's prohibited. And so I hope they can find a way to publicize this game there. So I will go over the historical background as I'm showing you the menu and so on. Most of this work was done by Gigantus, who is a fantastic modder. Grand Campaign, here we are. It's just extraordinary. I don't know how he does it. He's done almost like everything that you see graphic-wise, including the map, and all the text editing, and almost everything. It's just amazing. So anyway, so I'll go over the historical background. As I said, what is the situation here? We're in the 3rd century AD in China. My Chinese history is almost a blank sheet, and so I will just say what I understand about the background, and I may be wrong, so excuse me. So we're in the 3rd century AD in China, and there was a dynasty that has become ineffectual. So there was a Han dynasty that ruled for a long time, but it has come to a point that he has lost control over the provinces, and various nobles have now become governors of the various provinces, and they have gained very high status to the point that the emperor is almost a figurehead. And there are several major clans who are represented in this game. And this whole lore about this period comes, I do believe, from a single book plus a couple of other things that were just peripheral to it that were written about this period. It's almost like a novel, but it's actual real history to the extent things are not exaggerated. Sometimes there are wild stories about people who are extremely powerful, extremely, strong, great warriors that can kill, they cannot be killed because they're so good and so on. And so there are some stories like that, which sounds like hard to believe. And so that's why I'm saying it's a little bit like a novel, but it's based on real history. And the main 3 clans that ruled central China at the time, that were the most powerful, were the Cao clan, this one here in blue, the Liu clan in green, and the Sun clan in red. And the Liu clan, something happened to it. One of their heroes, this guy was called Liu Bei, I think, was exiled. Something went wrong, I don't remember, and he was forced to leave this area and go out west. And there he founded his a new kind of state. And then he continued to fight for supremacy and for control of China. I'm not sure who won at the end. I think it was Cao who won at the end, or the Cao clan. I'm not sure. In any case, there are also various other clans here in China. And then there are some which are slightly peripheral to it, like this one, for example, the Yuan clan. There are some that are even further away. This one, the Yuzu. And then there's another one called Southern Tribes somewhere. Ziliang is also slightly peripheral up there. There's another one called Southern Tribes somewhere. here, this one, down here in the south of China towards India. So these are the various factions, and they're vying for supremacy and to rule over the emperor. So I'm going to start a campaign, or rather I'm going to show you a campaign that I have already started during playtesting. What I have started, it's not, I think, the final version. It was still in a playtesting version, but near the end, just before release, very close to release. And I'm playing out one of the factions to finish the campaign, but I'm going to go back a few turns before I finish the campaign, so we have something to look at. You have these very wonderful quotes with these beautiful loading screens. The quotes are either from Sun Tzu's The Art of War or from the actual lore of the Rise of the Three Kingdoms. So here's my faction. It's this faction, this green faction called Queen Zhu. I could never remember the name. I have no notion of Chinese. I had trouble, so I was calling it the green faction. And the blue faction is the Cow clan, and we're at loggerheads with each other. You can see here in the strat map, I am controlling quite a large area, and I have about 27 regions. I need 3 more, and I will win the campaign. And so we are not quite yet at the end of the campaign. So because I was playtesting with a slightly different campaign AI. I think I could be wrong. In any case, everything else is as it was, and there's only one thing missing, I do believe. That after this stage, some missions were added. For example, as I said before, there was a hero around this area here, was called Liu Bei, and something happened. I'm not sure what happened. He was exiled, lost favor. Maybe his region was conquered or something. And so there's a mission that sends him out to the west, and it's part of the game. So you get something here, like this one, which says missions. You get a mission to go someplace here and, whatever, conquer something. And so this is part of how these missions work. And I think they're focusing mainly on his story, but also on some of the other heroes from the lore. I don't have this, and I don't know if there were any for this faction, the King Zhu. In any case, there is one thing that you see here, these various units. These are common, very common units. You see them here. All factions have them. So they're not special to my faction. We'll see in a minute. If you go here, for example, I'm being besieged. They have some of the same units that I have. You see down here, these are my units, and these are their units. Many of them are the same. So a lot of the factions have the same units, especially these central Chinese core factions. What is the difference? The difference, surprisingly, is not so much in the units themselves, it's in the generals. So the leaders, so if you look at the tables where they have the units, there are individual, let's say there's an individual unit for a specific general, for a specific hero, a named hero. He has that specific bodyguard unit. And it's just made for him. And every general, every hero has his own bodyguard unit. And it's a unique unit, just only he has that unit. That's quite amazing. Some of them have infantry, some of them have archers, some of them have cavalry, horse archers, lancers, swordsmen, whatever. I mean, just have all these different units, different numbers, different whatever types of horses, different skills, and so on. Each general is individual. Of course, they also have special traits. So because they are done in this way, every named general, and they're all somehow named and generated by a script, everyone has special traits that reflect the story from that period, from that lore. So that's a very, very unique approach to a mod. There's nothing like it. Other things about this mod that are very unique. If you go somewhere here, I've found some of these. There's some unique buildings. I wonder now where they are. But somewhere here, if you search and search, there are some unique buildings, and I don't know if they have any role in the game. There's like some kind of pagoda, and then there is a reclining Buddha or something, and they are like unique features maybe in the geography of China. Now here's one. It's a long wall of some kind of part of the long wall of China, for example. You can see it also here. There are various other things, if I can find them. Can't remember where they were. Like this, like some kind of pagoda like that, and various things. In any case, so I'm not sure if they play a role in anything. Oh, here's that reclining Buddha here. Yeah, let's have a look. Yeah, there he is. Oh. So, so that's another thing that Gigantus put into the mod. As I said, I'm not sure if they have a function or if they're just decorative. And the Emperor is based in this place here. It's called Cow Clan City. I'm not sure. I think it's based here. Or maybe it's based here. Oh, this is another, it's I think one of the other wonders or something. This green thing. I don't know what's happened here. I think the Cow Clan has come to control the Emperor. Originally it's in a city. Somewhere here there is a city that belonged to the Emperor, I do believe. And then the clans in this game vie for the Emperor's favor. And they try to win him, so to have him on their side, a little bit like with the shogunate in Japan a long time after this. And he lives in this place here. I think it was here, maybe somewhere else. It's a place that's very hard to access. And so eventually when you win his favor, then you can, I guess, control that city. Another thing that's very kind of interesting, next to this idea of you have to plot and somehow win the Emperor's favor, and this is like part of the game, you have to kind of work towards that goal. Another thing that's kind of interesting is the map. It's obviously a very, I'd say, totally unique map. It's not just because it is, you know, it's just a unique game, but it has some very unique features. You have these rivers, they are navigable, they're like sea. And there are only a couple of points where you can cross them. And then you get up here, and there's these mountains that are impassable. So this river, for the most part, is impassable. You cannot just cross it over, except in one point here with this green arrow. And then these mountains are impassable. And so you can see how there's like bits, fragmented bits of the map. There's one bit here, and there's another bit here, and then south of the river there's another area here, and then there's another area here, and then there is, for example, here, if you end up in this part of the world, if you like one of these settlements, like this one called Yunnan, there's like no way out. I mean, you can go maybe up to here, and then the rest of the map is unusable. And then if you go towards Yanning, there's nowhere to go. I mean, if you go here, you get blocked off. You cannot move out. So after you go to Yanning, you have to follow this kind of river or something. And you follow it and follow it, and it goes zigzag, zigzag. And then somewhere here, you open up in this area, and then you can come out of this corner of the map. And these forests also are impassable. And so the map is broken up into subsections. Now, I have to say, I'm not sure if this was a great idea. I'm sure there are reasons why this was done, like historical reasons. And maybe There's something in the lore of the rise of the three kingdoms that's behind this. But the AI has a little bit of an issue when a map is broken up like this, because you have a faction here and wants to attack a faction there and cannot go across, then the game crashes, or just this faction, the AI crashes for this faction. Here's that pagoda I was talking about, saying there's a pagoda somewhere. It's one of these wonders. So here it is. So as I was saying, so if you like live here and you want to go across, you're going to go somewhere else, like over the other side, and you cannot, then the faction that's here, the AI crashes for this faction. That's a bit of a problem. If the faction is on the same part of the map that you are, it tends to stay more active. It doesn't crash. But when I say it crashes, the AI crashes, I mean it crashes. It doesn't just stay passive, it crashes. And you can see some evidence of this here. You can see how some of these factions, no, not this one, military ranking, territorial, financial ranking. You see sometimes they had difficulty spending money, so this faction went up to 360,000. I don't know what happened here. It could be here that I changed the AI, and then this faction started working again. If you see this, this is evidence that the AI for this faction has crashed, and you have to do something about it. Borrow an AI from another game or something. And so you see sometimes this is a little bit better. This tended to crash and then went down. Like this one crashed up to this point, and then something happened. It started working again. So anyway, these issues are caused, I think, by the nature of the map. But for the most part, I mean, you saw that this blue faction had crashed for a little bit, but then when we started sharing a border, then it became active, because basically what the game tries to do is it tries to attack the human player. And so now that I have shared a border with this blue faction, the Cow clan, this faction became active. So the AI became active and hired a lot of armies. You can see these blue armies, and it's late sheets here. You can see. So I have one guy here. He's hauled into the settlement called Hefei, and it's being besieged by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stacks. It's amazing. And there's another guy here in this place called Chen Xiang or something. I cannot pronounce Chinese. And then he's being besieged by 2 or 3 factions. There's some war nearby. And this blue faction, the Cow clan, has created a kind of marginal line. So you just put like this blue line, it has armies along the border, almost all along the border, and then it's guarding the border, and then it goes like this or around. It has units here, and here it decided to launch an attack. And then there are other places here that has like a stronghold here with lots and lots of armies, because presumably there are other factions, hostile factions somewhere in this area, possibly. It has become very, very, very strong faction, this blue faction. And I'm this green faction, the Qing Zhu. So because of this issue that the AI has problems because of the broken up map, there's an economy script at work. And the economy script tries to take care of the fact that some factions, when they crash, they accumulate a lot of cash. And they put it in the bank and they cannot use it because the AI is not working, so it nothing happens. Basically, every turn the engine gives the faction money, but the AI has crashed, so it doesn't know what's going on. So the money just builds up in the bank and nothing happens. And so there's this economy script to try to control this a little bit. And so that's another feature of this mod. So what that script does is, I don't know if I have any merchants. I don't think I have.
We don't trust you enough to do business. Yes,
I have a merchant here, for example, this guy Kong Pang. And he's a very good merchant. How much money does he make? He makes 0 money. He makes 0. You know, he's like an excellent merchant. He makes no money. And that's part of how this economy script works. Over time, it devalues the income from resources, and eventually you get 0 income. And so you don't get anything from your resources and from your merchants. I mean, he's sitting there, but he's, it's like it's the same as if you didn't have him. You have him, you don't have him. I cannot kill him. So he has to stay. And actually, it cost me money. I think it cost me like something like 50 gold per turn, but I cannot do anything about it. I cannot kill my own agents. So he just sits there. Then there are some other unique agents. They maybe I have some of them here. They have diplomats, they have scholars, and the scholars help to improve public order, if I remember correctly. And then they fight enemy scholars, and they do something. I think they're like assassins or something, but they also have an effect on public order. And they tend to only affect enemy scholars. I can't remember actually anymore. I don't remember if they, I know that there are assassins. Whatever, I mean, that agent does, it's mainly influencing other scholars and also influences like the culture of your region and public order. And then there are the usual stuff. There's a spy.
My lord.
And there are assassins, there's a diplomat, merchants. Of course, by now merchants are useless. I don't have very many.
At your service.
Natural born merchants. So using this resource, also 0 gold. So you don't make any money once this economy script kicks in to try and control this kind of runaway financing of the AI factions that are no longer active. There is another aspect of this, that because they're not active, sometimes the campaign can get a little bit passive. But something have happened here, and as I showed you before, the factions have become active again. You can see here. So around about game turn 78 or so. I don't know what I did here, but most of the factions have gone back to do things. It's possible that I changed the AI at this point, and all factions are now being active again. So that's these are the main features, I think. I don't think there's anything else that comes to my mind at this point. I'm sure there are other things that I haven't talked about. There's a kind of supply script of some sort. So if you go out to sea with one of your boats, one of these boats, and you stay out at sea for too many game turns, I don't know if I have an example, then the boats start...
Can you not tell friend from foe?
The boats start running out of supplies, and then they get stuck in the middle of the ocean and don't move anymore. So this is part of this other supply script. Also, your armies, if they stay away from a city or some settlement, then they start losing supplies, and then you have to forage. You can go to foreign territory, enemy territory, and then you can forage. You can make, you can kind of continue in this way, but it's possible though there's a limit, and after a while you have problems. I've mostly experienced this issue at sea. I haven't experienced it so much. So if you have an army that's on boats and they're at sea, they're traveling a long way, let's say they sail out of here to go to some faraway place, I don't know, like here somewhere by boat. And then at some point the army starts losing movement points and the boat slows down to almost a standstill. So that's because of the supply script. So that's another thing this mod has. And so now I'll show you a battle, and you can see here now what is going on, as I've just explained. This army here is holding this settlement and it's been besieged by 7 armies, only actively besieged by 1 army, the other ones are reinforcing. And so we have to find a solution out of this, and this was very common. So once I made contact with the blue faction here, the cow clan, we just kept fighting battles, and I was trying to take some of the settlements. Maybe I took a couple of the settlements. It was very hard. Then they were coming back with stack after stack, trying to take those settlements back, or just trying to take any settlements that I have. And it's impossible to fight all these armies out in the open. It's just too dangerous. So you have somehow to use a stratagem. So one of the quotes says that, and if you are cornered or in desperate situations, you have to use a stratagem. And the stratagem that I'm using, you might have seen it from my other campaigns, so it's not really a stratagem anyway, is that I defend in settlement. And because very often the enemy, the AI armies will lay siege and will not attack. They'll just besiege and stay and stay and stay for like 9 game turns or whatever until you starve out. Then what I do is I sally out. And if I'm lucky, there are no night fighters reinforcing the army that's besieging me. So then I can attack them. If there are reinforcing armies, they have generals that are night fighters in the area and they can reinforce this army, then it gets a little bit more difficult, but you can still cause some damage. And if you, since the AI very often will not attack, will just lay siege and try to starve you out, then you have many opportunities. Eventually you'll wear out the enemy and they may walk out. You may defeat them. And that's a kind of historical thing. There's nothing special about it. It's just the only way to deal with all these kind of stacks that are gathering around my settlements. So this is the situation we're in now, where we just need 3 more settlements and we win. And I think the settlements that I got them out here. I think I had conquered these 2 and then I continued expanding, got a couple more of these out here. And then I won the campaign, because down here it was like World War I. It was like, it was like millions on the other side. It was like just couldn't make any headway at this point. So I launched the battle now, and I'll see you in a bit. And we are sallying out, as you see. In war, practice dissimulation, and you will succeed. Yeah, come up with a stratagem. That's what the plan is. So we're in the battle now. The Cow clan is besieging our settlement and we're sallying out. And what the enemy is doing here is they are retreating, they're abandoning their siegecraft, and they're retreating back towards a hill away from our settlement. Here's the settlement. It's a totally unique settlement. You see it has totally unique buildings you don't find in the main game. Excellent work by a world modeler that made all these beautiful buildings. And so here's again our army sallying out of the settlement. You see it has this very beautiful, very impressive gate with the guardhouse on top and towers on the side. And here's our army who's sallied out. At the moment it's mostly cavalry. We're also sallying out with infantry. Our general is here. So you can see him, he's on the second line on the right. And this is his bodyguard. So he has a bodyguard of lancers. As I said, every general, every hero has his own type of bodyguard. Different numbers of men. Some of them are lancers, some of them are swordsmen, some of them are archers, and so on. The costing scheme we used for this is the standard costing scheme that's used in all other main modes in stainless steel and Third Age, Total War, and the main vanilla game. It's based on the statistics of the units. And you can see our army sallying out slowly. The enemy has just retreated away from the settlement. So we are coming out at ease. We are not being attacked or anything. It's interesting to ask what would an enemy army, besieging army, do in a situation where the defenders sally out? Would they attack them if they were not prepared, if they were surprised by the timing of the sally out? What would happen? I would expect they would be aloof. They would just sit back and try and see what are they trying to do, which is what exactly the AI is doing now. And the enemy has brought some archers to harass us, but we moved away. And the enemy also has a battery of ballistas here. Then they have a general who is an infantry unit. Here he is with the more interesting uniform with the cape on the back and the red plume on his helmet. Here's the general. So he's with his infantry unit, which is some kind of Imperial Guard unit. And the enemy, in this case, that has no cavalry. It's only infantry. Now you might think this is a good army for a siege, to have just infantry. But it's a different thing if you play against human players. It's a different thing if you play against, you know, online. If you play online, if you play against the AI and so on. Ideally, the AI needs to have a mixed army, just in case. And usually the AI in this mod has a mixed army. It just happened in this case it only had infantry. This was not the normal thing. Okay, so here our general is about to charge an archer unit that was hanging out. It had separated itself from the rest of the army. So here's our general, and he's galloping full speed against this archer unit here. Well, the enemy archers managed to shoot a few arrows, but they were charged anyway, and they got obliterated. They're also being supported by other missile units behind them. And our general now has to retreat. We didn't lose any cavalry this time around. We killed a fair number of men from this unit. I think we lost maybe one cavalryman. And these archers are shooting back, and they hit the bodyguard with arrows. Fortunately, no one was killed. So they had stopped a little too close. And so here's again the enemy army. You can see here from behind the enemy army. They have these ballistas, and they have archers at the front. And they have one unit still hanging out here. So our general is going to charge them a second time. Some of their friends had retreated to join the main ranks, but now they're coming back. And here's our general. He prepares for a second charge. Here's that archer unit. They have rearranged themselves into two ranks. They are ready to shoot another volley. This time they're trying to run off. And they got charged as they were running back to their lines. Now the enemy army has many crossbowmen, and the crossbowmen are firing, shooting crossbow bolts in the direction of our general. So his bodyguard is suffering some casualties, and now they're charging these missile units back here, but their charge was broken by the hail of crossbow bolts and arrows. And so it was a very lukewarm charge, a very pathetic charge. So they're heading off. They lost a couple of men there, and it hardly killed anyone. Well, they killed a few people, not many. So the enemy archers keep shooting. They have huge range. And now they're trying to rearrange their line. While all this is going on, our cavalry is moving on the flanks, unseen, unobserved. So we've got cavalry now on both flanks, just a bit to the rear of the enemy army. And they are preparing to make a move on our enemy. So it looks like our enemy has seen our cavalry, has understood that our cavalry now is in the rear of their position, and so they're heading up to shoot at our cavalry. But you realize they've made a big mistake in that the missile units, these crossbowmen, have moved too far away from their spearmen. So they have been charged by two of our cavalry companies, and two of those units were obliterated by the charge of that cavalry. Here's another unit that had become separated. They were chasing after our general, and they got charged. Unfortunately, our charge was a very pathetic one. And while all this was going on, if you remember, the enemy had some ballistas, and we attacked the ballistas with another cavalry unit. We managed to squeeze through a gap and attack the ballistas, and killed about 2/3 of the ballista crew, but the ballistas still have men. Here some of our cavalry has charged another unit, and the enemy ballistas are trying to shoot at our cavalry, but our cavalry is too fast moving, and it has attacked a unit of crossbowmen here. The enemy responds with some spearmen, and so the spearmen charge our cavalry, and our cavalry has to retreat. And we continue our charges, our attacks. Here 2 of our companies charge 2 companies of enemy skirmishers and obliterate those 2 companies as well. And here's the ballista, and they get charged the second time from behind by one of our cavalry companies. So this time the ballista crew was obliterated, so they are all dead, so they can no longer fire the ballistas. So at this point our enemy has lost all their missile units, all their crossbowmen, all their archers, and the ballistas, and so now we have free reign to do as we wish with them. So what we're going to do now is send cavalry in, send our own ballistas, here they're approaching, send archers later, and try and slowly wear them down. So here we brought our ballistas into one side of the enemy deployment, and we are preparing to fire at their flank. So this is the right wing of the enemy we're about to shoot at. So the ballistas are firing flaming bolts. And the ballista arrows, the ballista bolts have hit one of the enemy spear units. You see, Chinese spearmen at the time had these very interesting looking spears. Well, I'm not sure what's the explanation for their shape. It's possible that it was like this to block enemy thrusts. You know, they have this horizontal kind of projection to block enemy spears. And they use them almost as pikes. We keep harassing them with ballista fire, with ballista shots. And this will go on like this for a while. Now you may observe at this point the enemy is a little bit inactive. This is a weakness of the AI. You see this in similar situations in other mods as well. For example, you see this in Broken Crescent. It's not maybe quite as extreme in Broken Crescent, but you see it also there. Some AIs have this sort of behavior. Sometimes if you sally out, the AI army will become very passive. It varies a little bit. Not all AIs have this behavior. I don't know what would you do. I mean, I've seen players playing online, and they take an army and put it on a hill, and they make some kind of noob fort, and then you surround them and you attack them from all sides. And if human players do this and the AI does it, you know, it's the same. You know, it's a tactic. You know, just wait until the enemy runs out of arrows or whatever. I don't know what the plan is with these noob forts. You know, something similar here. It's a tactic, even humans use it. Whether you could do something else like run around, depends. If you run around, then maybe cavalry will be more useful rather than a ballista. But I have cavalry as well. And if, run around with cavalry, maybe I'll bring spearmen. I have a spearman as well. Anything the AI tries to do, the human player can find a way to counter that. And so just staying stationary like this, defending your ground, is an option. Of course, you lose men. It's difficult to defeat the human player. Because someone may say, okay, let's make a different AI for this. I'm sure if you make a different AI, you'll have some other weakness. But we can try. Feel free. There are other good AIs. There's the Zerix AI and the Germanicus. Real bad AI. That's probably better. In situations such as this, it's less passive. But you can still subvert it. You can find ways to beat it. No AI is capable to win a human player against a human player. So we keep hitting them with fiery ballista shots, with fiery ballista bolts, arrows. And now we've turned our attention to the enemy general with his bodyguard. This bodyguard is very, very tough. It would be suicidal to charge them with cavalry. They are super heavy, and they have very high density. And cavalry charges would be suicidal against this unit. Infantry attacks, you have to attack them from every side. It's very hard to break this unit, and so using a ballista is the best thing you could do. Especially in situations such as this, where they stay stationary, they don't run about. Sometimes the ballista completely misses this small unit. Sometimes it hits. If it hits, it kills a number of men. But I shot for a long time on this unit to wear it down. They've lost quite a few of their comrades, and this went on. Their general is still in good shape. But these two shots were devastating. Sometimes I have the feeling the ballista gets more and more accurate. If it keeps firing at a target, over time it gets slightly more accurate at firing at that same target. And there the enemy general got hit, but he has a lot of hits. He's one of those guys who have like a lot of hit points. So he's very seriously injured, but he's still alive. You see he's like bleeding from his head. His head is bloodied. But he survived that ballista shot, nonetheless. Quite remarkable. But he's down to just a handful of companions, and it looks like his luck eventually will run out. But it's still lucky. A few shots missed him there. Maybe luck is one of his attributes.
Men have slain the enemy general. Without him, his troops will lose their will to fight.
So, we've slain the enemy general, Captain Cao Xun. And so we can now focus back on harassing the main line, the enemy line, with our ballista. To their credit, despite losing their general, the enemy soldiers are holding their ground and time is running out. If we don't defeat them, then the siege will be maintained and they can still be reinforced by those armies. We're actually attacking at night here, and that's why they didn't get reinforced, because the nearby stacks do not have night fighters as generals, and so we were able to isolate this unit, this army. But if we do not defeat this army, then they may launch an attack, next turn, or they may get reinforced. So we have to defeat them before the time runs out, before the clock runs out. So we're scoring some great hits with our ballistas. Every time the ballistas fire, they kill about a dozen men or so. Sometimes, maybe fewer. Up to a dozen men with a single bolt. Another devastating shot. And finally, one unit has broken. They're retreating. Here's the enemy bodyguard unit. What's left of it, about 7 bodyguards. Their general is dead. And now the enemy army is rearranging its lines. The skins of the units are very faithful in terms of the armor they're wearing. They're very nice in that way. There is something I don't like, is that they have very long legs and very large feet, which is uncharacteristic for Chinese. They almost look like they're young kids on hormones or something. Have grown very long and sprangly, and they're wearing their grandparents' suit. The suit is very small and tight-fitting. It has this kind of, it looks a little bit like this, like they were the grandparents' kind of suit. It was a very small guy, and they grown very tall. Anyway, what can you do? They actually, otherwise, they're very nice, the models. I like them very much. So you saw there another unit was routed. Here it is. They couldn't stand all these ballista bolts, and so they ran off. But our cavalry is waiting at the back, and so they are taking them prisoners. The rest of the men are holding their line. Time is running out. We're bringing men out of the town. You can see them there near those siege engines on the other side. We're also bringing our archers out, because we have to get these guys to move. Now at this point, one of our cavalry units had strayed too close, and they got attacked by one of the enemy infantry units, and we lost a few horsemen there. They strayed close to the enemy lines because they were chasing those routed men, and it just came too close, and I wasn't paying attention, so they were attacked. So, this, what the AI is doing is not so bad. If you have to be super careful to be able to defeat the AI in this way. And you have to imagine you have to do this almost like every single turn, because almost every single turn you'll be attacked by a large stack that will lay siege on one of your settlements, and sometimes they will have reinforcing armies. So here we'll send some cavalry to attack this unit in the rear. It wasn't a great charge. This is a reasonably heavy spear unit. They have high density. And so they held their place, and some spearmen or swordsmen came out from the rest of the line and attacked us. So we had to round off. We lost a few horsemen there. So the AI is not completely passive. So it has its own logic. It's doing something, whatever it thinks is right. I'm not knocking it down. It looks passive, but it's not totally stupid. It's prepared to act if the opportunity is right. And just defending like this, if they were defending against arrows, they would be more effective. But because the ballistas are armor piercing, they have a more devastating effect. And because they're placed on the flank, the effect multiplies. And so the enemy is surrounded, they're holding their place, they're suffering enormous casualties now. Our ballistas are getting more and more accurate as time passes by. At least it feels that way. So this unit in front of us, this blue unit, is very heavy compared to the other ones. And so right now we're targeting that unit because that unit is going to be the biggest trouble if we decide to attack them in melee. So they still have about half their men left, and time is really running out at this point. So here's our ballista crew. They're firing their last few bolts. They're about to run out of ballista bolts. Here's the dangerous unit, the blue unit. That's very tough. And now finally we decided to charge them. We ran out of ballista arrows, so we're charging with our cavalry.
The enemy are badly bloodied. They have lost half their men.
So it looks like we routed 2 of their units. We routed 1 unit on this side, we routed a couple of units on the other side. The enemy now still has a fair number of men, so we have to hurry up, get out of there. We still have a few ballista bolts left, but not very many. That one completely missed. This one didn't. This is not terribly exciting perhaps, but in a way I'm glad it's not terribly exciting, because you have to fight these battles every single game turn. And imagine if you had to seriously micromanage all the time. You'd never, these games, this campaign will feel endless. So again, our cavalry prepares for another charge. They're charging from uphill, downhill.
Behold how our cowardly foe runs. It's time to press the attack.
And this charge finally broke the camel's back. I thought they'd never out, and it was just about 3 or 4 minutes left before time ran out. And we had run out of ballista arrows this time. So we defeated the enemy army in the nick of time. And so that means now that the siege will be lifted, and we can bring in reinforcements. We can take any units that need retraining out, and then we can bring fresh cavalry in. And so the tactic I was using here was every frontier town, every frontier city had about 4 to 5 cavalry units, like we see here, and they would come out and sally out every time there was a besieging army, try to cause as much damage as they could. And if they didn't manage to rout the enemy army, then the enemy army would lay siege on the settlement, and then we could defend with the infantry that was left in there. If they routed the enemy and the enemy lifted the siege, then I would take the cavalry away and bring new cavalry in, and then I would retrain this cavalry so they could do the same thing next time around. And so you need a lot of cavalry for these sieges.
By the grace of
And
God,
cavalry is
our
everything.
foe is utterly vanquished. Let all who remember this day remember it as the day of our most glorious victory.
So our most glorious victory, we only lost 93 men. That's very good. As you can see, the ballista killed 944, but the cavalry did okay. 2 cavalry units killed over 300 each. So that was also a battle, a typical, very characteristic battle from the campaign. That gives you an idea of how it runs, the basics of how it runs. I hope you found that helpful and interesting, and thank you for watching.